Julian John on Azorius aggro against Dylan Donegan on Sultai mid-range. This is a matchup that I got to watch firsthand quite a bit last weekend. Jacob Hagan actually was feeling pretty favored in this matchup, and I saw him dispatch many Sultai mid-range players, including the finals.
No, and I think that is definitely a spot where the Azorius aggro deck can shine, especially the ones playing Unbreakable Formation, a card that is quite good against these Sultai mid-range decks that just try to build up a large battlefield. Julian John not going in that direction, though, a more traditional version, ones that we've seen like the one that Jacob Hagan played last week featuring Deputy Detention in the main deck.
Donegan won the flip. He shocked for an Overgrown Tomb on turn 1 for Llanowar Elves, which means that his Woodland Cemetery let him cast Jadelight Ranger on turn 2. Put another Llanowar Elves in the graveyard, so he's got a 3-2 and drew an Overgrown Tomb with that as well. Julian John had a turn 1 Plains into Sky Marcher Aspirant, so he's kind of online, but Donegan's presenting a bunch of creatures, which can be an issue.
Right, and the Azorius aggro deck is not known for being able to kill creatures, and it desperately needs to hit 10 total permanents to turn on things like Snubborn Sentry. It also just wants to keep a bunch of creatures on the battlefield so that it can attack with 3 creatures on the same turn and transform Legion's Landing. So I definitely think that Julian John not going to offer up a trade here with the Sky Marcher Aspirant, because once he does get the City's Blessing, or the Star City's Blessing, if you will, he's going to be able to give that thing flying and start rumbling through the air and validating those creatures like Jadelight Ranger.
And a pretty good turn 2 on that front, as you see Legion's Landing and Hunted Witness for John. He's up to 6 permanents. And back on Dylan Donegan's side, just going to be a tapped Breeding Pool, not really adding anything to the battlefield, possibly leaving up some kind of removal spell here.
Yeah, I mean, it's also possible he has nothing.
Yeah.
And, it's not like these Sultai mid-range decks play, 6 to 8 removal spells that cost 2 and 3 mana. They are built to play creatures early on. They have a few 2-mana removal spells like Assassin's Trophy and Cast Down, but they're not overloaded on it, so the odds that he has one here is not super high. He's playing defense with this Jadelight Ranger, but Julian John going to go for a Deputy Detention here. This could be Blowout City.
And he's going to target Jadelight Ranger. I actually thought he was going to go for Llanowar Elves with this being the play. This is interesting.
Nah, he wants to get in as much damage as possible, and Dylan Donegan might really punish him here with a Cast Down.
And there was the attack. The Legion's Landing transformed, and here's Assassin's Trophy on that Deputy Detention. That Jadelight Ranger's back. It's going to reveal Jadelight Ranger to an Explorer. Donegan thinking if he wants to leave that one on top, and he does.
Now, hitting the spell is actually a pretty big deal because it allows both Explorers to put a +1/+1 counter on it, which in turn allows Jadelight Ranger to get 2 counters and eat the Sky Marcher Aspirant instead of trading.
The Witness and the Vampire token did come across. Donegan to 16, John to 21, and post-combat, there's another Legion's Landing, there's another Vampire token.
Yeah, and we know for a fact Donegan has at least another land drop in hand. He has a Jadelight in hand, which he can use to continue digging for stuff. Decides instead to hold up 4 mana, very likely a Vraska's Contempt incoming, but also could just be holding back things so that he can cast Finality on the following turn.
Overgrown Tomb tapped was the play for Donegan. I like that he moved the Llanowar Elves back with the lands, but for clarity and coverage, we have to have that with the creatures.
Yeah, it's the same thing with things like Dryad Arbor, especially the From the Vault Dryad Arbor that looks like a basic forest. Just don't want any confusion, even though Julian John heads up enough to know that Llanowar Elf can potentially block, but we don't want any shenanigans happening and anyone having any real reason for complaint.
Yeah, and these creatures are not very exciting targets for a Vraska's Contempt.
I mean, that's true, but Hunted Witness does potentially represent 2 creatures inside combat. So
there's Tithe Taker, so if Donegan wanted to Contempt this turn, that's when he would have had to do it. John's going to attack with the 2 Vampire tokens and Hunted Witness. Donegan will put Jadelight Ranger in front of the Witness. That'll convert into a life-linking Soldier token. Donegan to 14, John to 23.
Yeah, trying to basically get rid of all of these creatures that have double lives so that the turn where he does go for Finality, he's able to leave Julian John with very few follow-ups.
And there is Finality. That'll pump up the Jadelight Ranger and clear away John's board, save for the Afterlife on that Tithe Taker.
Yeah, it's going to create a 1/1 Flying Spirit token, as well as the activated ability from Adanto the First Fort. Julian is going to be left with effectively 2 creatures here still, but not much else.
Yeah, no attack for Donegan. His creature only had 1 toughness there because of the finality, so smart to hang back.
Yeah, I mean, it would have just traded with the vampire token. That's definitely not where you want to be.
Back on John's side, he made that token off of the first fort, and here's a Adanto Vanguard for his turn. And we're back to Donegan after an attack with that flying token. Donegan fell to 13, but his play for turn is Vivian Reed. He's going to plus that and find Ravenous Chupacabra, which is pretty powerful against a bunch of mopey creatures. John's going to make another vampire token off the first fort, and we'll go back John's way. No attacks for Donegan. Leave that back as a blocker for those ground creatures. Conveniently, the 5 toughness Jaylight Ranger does a great job of checking that Adanto Vanguard. Otherwise, that one can be a bit tricky to deal with.
Oh, for sure. Now, the Adanto Vanguard is indestructible, so it's going to rumble in here in combat. A good chance it gets blocked by the Jaylight to prevent the most damage possible.
So this was an attack with 4 creatures. Now, the Legion's Landing would transform here. John's going to respond to that trigger by using his first Adanto, and that one's going to hit the bin.
Yeah, a neat little trick that you can do with an additional Legion's Landing is activate the first one and then transform a second one, and then sometimes get a double up on tokens for a turn.
The 3 tokens hit Vivian Reed. She fell to 3 loyalty. John had to pay 4 life to keep his Adanto Vanguard around and then gain 2 off a lifelink. And we're back to Dylan Donegan. He'll plus the Vivian Reed. Merfolk Branchwalker is the play after that. He'll explore another Branchwalker to the graveyard. And here's Jadelight Ranger, or rather, Ravenous Chupacabra will be the play. That's the one he found last turn.
Yeah, taking care of that spirit. The flying creature just getting over for small chip points.
And then Llanowar Elves also added to the battlefield. It's not the most exciting thing to just trade that with Adanto tokens, but Donegan doing a pretty good job of stabilizing.
Yeah, and this is exactly where he wants to be. Has enough blockers so that even the Adanto first fort is not a huge deal, making all these 1/1s every single turn. But the Vivian Reed keeps chunking up, digging for cards. Eventually he's going to find a Wild Growth Walker. And then eventually he's going to find some other way to close the game, whether that's Hydra Crassus or what have you.
Yeah, we're in a situation where John does have the Adanto. It's pretty powerful, but he's drawing 1 card a turn, plus making that 1/1 against Donegan, who has an active Vivian Reed.
Yeah, and it's just really showing off how powerful Vivian Reed is in this Sultai mid-range deck, able to continually generate card advantage, resource advantage, where the Azorius aggro deck is basically just a one-trick pony. Plays a bunch of creatures out, tries to pump them up, tries to punch through lethal damage. Can occasionally play a longer game thanks to Adanto the first fort off that Legion's Landing. But, very one-dimensional archetype.
Tap a 4 for John. That means Conclave Tribunal. That's going to clean up the Vivian Reed. Hopefully that one sticks on John's side. He's going to shock for Hallowed Fountain to 23. That'll leave up an activation of that Adanto again. Going back Donegan's way. So without his Planeswalker, now his position actually looks quite a bit worse.
Oh, absolutely. Now he's not really generating any real advantage facing off against Adanto the first fort. It's kind of the opposite of what was just the situation. He has a Vraska's Contempt in hand. Enough creatures to play defense if he so chooses. At 13 life, I think choosing so is important. Vraska's Contempt here could potentially take care of that Adanto Vanguard, though, and then perhaps a few creatures start rumbling in.
And Donegan plays a Jadelight Ranger. That's going to explore another Ranger to the top 2 times, so that's up to a 4/3. Here's a Vraska's Contempt on the Adanto Vanguard, and Donegan's going to get aggressive. Chupacabra, 3/2 Merfolk Branchwalker, and that 6/5 Jadelight Ranger all coming across.
Yeah, I don't hate this attack from Donegan, but I would not be surprised if Julian just soaks all of it. He could just make a token here and just attack next turn with 5 tokens, gain 5 life, and Donegan could only eat 1 and potentially trade with 1 other. It's also possible that Julian also just wants to block with all of his tokens and gain 5 life. But again, just soaks the damage and now gets untapped with a horde of 1/1s. And if he finds Banach Marshall or something else, he can really start chalking up a lot of extra damage.
Yeah, life-liking tokens, they're no joke in a damage race. But that attack, it did all come across. That was for 11. John, looks like we have him at 8. He's looking at an attack with his 5 life-flicking tokens. He's going to go ahead and make that attack. There was not any kind of pre-combat marshal. Donegan is going to trade Llanowar Elves and block another with a Jade Light Ranger. 3 comes across. Donegan to 10, John to 11.
And now he can just use the Adanto First Fort to effectively chump block the biggest Jade Light Ranger, gain 1 life, and he'll take a decent chunk from the rest. So he's he's very much losing this race. So this is a good turning point for Dylan Donegan, finding the window for him to really turn the corner and start actually applying pressure against this Adanto the First Fort.
And there was a Jade Light Ranger Donegan left on top. He put a Wild Growth Walker in the bin and draw a land and attack with all of his creatures there. John takes a bunch of damage down to 8. Used his Adanto to block the 6-power Jade Light Ranger. Snubhorde Sentry is going to be the play for John here. He's got the City's Blessing, and his tokens do not have great attacks here, so he's going to hang him back. And, ooh, big draw for Donegan. Here's Hydroid Krasis.
Yeah, and these are the top decks you live for when you're playing the Sultai mid-range deck. That's such a big draw. And Dylan at enough life where he can just churn in here with all of his tokens, force Julian John into some serious chump blocking situations, and really just has no great block. Even if he uses Snubhorn Sentry, he's effectively using it plus a token to trade with a larger threat. But for the most part, he's just getting run over.
And that Krasis was for 6. Donegan up to 13, drew 3 cards, attacks with all of his creatures, and John's got to start throwing some blockers out there. But going forward, Donegan's still going to have a good amount of creatures on the ground here, and also just has that 6/6 flyer. So yeah, John's going to put 1 Vampire token in front of the 6-power Ranger. Looks like he's going for a double block on the 3/2 to force a trade there. Sentry on Chupacabra.
Looks like we had life totals wrong. Julian is currently at 5 life. We'll get that fixed in just a second. So that changes the texture of this combat quite a bit. Julian can triple block on the bigger Jade Light Ranger to trade for it. He's going to essentially take 6 from these 2 creatures, but gain 4 life, so he only really takes 2. All the way down to 3 life. Gets to keep the Snubhorn Sentry, but facing down that 6/6 flyer doesn't have a lot of options next turn.
Yeah, got to eat the Chupacabra, trade with the Jade Light Ranger, but he goes to his turn, draws a card. It's not enough. Dylan Donegan up a game over Julian John.
Yeah, that was... I've watched 2 matches now so far from Dylan Donegan, 1.5 matches from Dylan Donegan. Both of the matchups that he's presented with, he figured out a way at various points to stop playing the control game and start playing the beatdown game, especially in scenarios that didn't necessarily look like he could do it. In that game in particular, facing off against 4 or 5 1/1 life-linking soldiers, Dylan figured out an attack he could make as well as a block on the following turn that really put him in a winning position, and he just grinded that to victory, even though Julian John had that active Adanto the First Fort.
Yeah, and they're going to go to sideboards. Julian John's got to figure some stuff out, but he has a very good sideboard for this matchup. Going down the list, he has 4 Tocatli Honor Guard, 3 Ajani Adversary Tyrants, 3 Baffling End, 3 Negate, a Disdainful Stroke, and a Deputy Detention. What do you like here?
So game 1 is not the easiest, and it certainly gets a bit easier after sideboard thanks to Tocatli Honor Guard. Most of the creatures from the Sultai mid-range deck outside of Hydroid Krasis have those enter the battlefield abilities, whether it's Ravenous Chupacabra or the Explore creature package with Jade Light Ranger. Tocatli Honor Guard shuts all that down. And if Dylan Donegan is not able to find one of his spot removal spells, or mistakenly uses one of those spot removal spells to take care of one of those early threats that Julian could produce, something like Tocatli Honor Guard could single-handedly change the entire texture of the game. I've seen Tocatli Honor Guard out of these Azorius aggro decks just put a complete hurtin' on these Sultai mid-range decks, and I'm sure your teammate last weekend really showed you how it was done.
Oh, yeah. He turned off some serious Merfolk Branchwalker action in the finals.
Yeah, Jacob Hagan just really putting on a show last week. But Julian John here is going to have an uphill battle, has to win the next 2. Fort Tocatli Honor Guard can help him do it, along with those 3 Baffling End, and potentially a Disdainful Stroke, and maybe some Ajani's.
Yeah, the Ajani actually quite good in matchups like this, just making your creatures large, keep up with the Explore creatures that get out of hand, and also it's just a value card, which you kind of need to meet Sultai on that axis at some point.
Right, and pumping toughness above Finality is a pretty big deal, and if your opponent plays Finality and clears the entire board, then Ajani Adversary Tyrants can come down and produce a creature, which is not a big or not a bad thing.
And Donegan looked pretty good in game 1. Let's see what he can do to upgrade in the sideboard games. 4 Duress, 3 Negate, 2 Midnight Reaper, 2 Plague Crafter, 2 Cast Down, an Assassin's Trophy, and a Cry of the Carnarium.
Does it say kill a creature on it?
Some of them do.
Yeah, those come in.
All right.
All of them. Not the Plague Crafters.
I was going to say that one, maybe not.
There's quite a few token generators from Julian John's side where Plague Crafter is going to be minimal have a minimal effect, and I don't think that's where you want. But Cast Down, Assassin's Trophy, these are cards that can clean up an early Tocatliana guard and unlock all of your really powerful creatures. And then Cry of the Carnarium is just this backup safety valve that if things go terribly wrong, it's a cheap sweeper on the draw specifically that can really get you back in the game. 1-drop into 2-drop into History of Benalia start, getting completely swept by that Cry of Carnarium is a pretty huge deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Cry, it definitely has games where it's very good. It's kind of funny that it's not good at all against Honor Guard, but it certainly has some games where it is going to shine. And so if you're watching this at home, you see some sweet standard decks here, maybe you can take them to an invitational qualifier near you if you're interested coming out to the invitational, coming up for SCG Con Summer. Pretty exclusive prizes. You have these personality tokens that we give away at the Opens. They're also going to be at the invitational qualifiers, as well as that unique play mat, and $1,000 in cash to the top 8.
Yeah, and that's guaranteed. No matter what the turnout is at that invitational qualifier, $1,000 guaranteed to the top 8. The invitational qualifications as well mean that you're going to get to come to SCG Con and hang out with me, Ron Overturf, and the rest of the gang here that work for SCG Tour, and come say hey, and we'll maybe sign you one of our personality tokens that I don't have.
You'll get one. You'll get one.
Jerks.
You got that old beast one.
I do have an old beast token. You are correct.
But if you want to find an IQ near you, go to StarCityGames.com/IQ.
Brad has 3 tokens. Okay? 3.
He's got a lot of personality.
Get out of here. Okay.
Nah, you'll get. I bet your next one is going to be real nice. It's coming.
As long as I get to pick the creature type.
What would you pick?
Whatever the one Muldrifter is, where it's everything. Or no, what are the ones that are everything?
Changelings?
Oh, damn it.
Emma did that one.
Yeah, Emma's already Changeling.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. Never mind. I don't even want one anymore.
First it was, I just want more tokens. Then it was if I could pick the creature type.
And then you put me on the spot. And I haven't thought about it, okay? I just want full creative control. I don't deserve it. The token or the creative control.
Nah, you great. You'll
Aw.
get one.
Aw.
You might not get to pick what it is, but you'll get one.
Yeah, the last time I came close was top 4 of SCG Con Summer year before last. I lost to what's his name? Tyron 2. I always remember his Twitter handle.
Dan Fournier.
Yeah, Dan Fournier beat me in the top 4 of that invitational, and I was very much looking forward to making a Thopter token to go along with Jerry's Merit Lodge token, so we could be the
Would be nice.
DDT.
DDT.
The DDT Bros. Nick Miller having a great Thopter token that we use here on the SCG Tour.
And we're underway in game number 2. Julian John was on the play. Had a Dauntless Bodyguard on turn 1. Turn 2, El Shock for a Hallowed Fountain, and Baffling End donning his turn 1 Llanowar Elves. Pretty reasonable swing in John's favor, as Donegan's going to cast Merfolk Branchwalker, finding a Drone Catacomb on turn 2.
Yeah, this does slow Donegan down quite a bit, but I'm not in love with that play, to be quite honest, simply because Baffling End is so important at taking care of those specific wild growth walkers, or sometimes taking out a creature that is good at blocking some of your stuff. But Julian John recognizes that Dauntless Bodyguard can potentially get blocked by Llanowar Elves, plus ramping him up to stuff like Ravaged Chupacabra, Hostage Taker, as well as just double spelling in the same turn is potentially powerful, and slowing that down is where he wanted to be at.
Turn 3 for John was History of Benalia. No attacks from the Bodyguard. We go back to Donegan. He's going to use a Jade Light Ranger, draw a land, and leave a Find Finality on the top of the deck.
Yeah, now we're a little bit away from that one, but just something like Llanowar Elves or an Incubation Druid next turn could leave Donegan with the ability to cast it on the following. At the very least, Donegan can just keep deploying some creatures, force Julian to continually do the same, and then at some point, Donegan pulls the trigger, cleans everything up, and leaves himself with at least 1, maybe 2 creatures on the battlefield.
So John's going to enter Chapter 2 of History of Benalia. There's that Knight token. Thinking about what he wants to do pre-combat. He's casting a Snubhorn Sentry and Baffling End on Jadelight Ranger.
Yeah, starts to make a lot more sense why he burned that Baffling End early on. Double duty of clearing the extra mana from Donegan's side, but also just had the backup to take care of that 3/2 Jadelight Ranger.
There was an attack with Knight token and Dauntless Bodyguard. Donegan goes ahead and trains his Merfolk Branchwalker with a Knight token. Takes 2 to 14. Gonna look at what John has, counting some permanents. That Sentry did give the City's Blessing on John's turn.
Yeah, we're at 9 right now, but before the attack we had 10. So that City's Blessing is on the line. Snubhorn Sentry able to rumble with the best of them. Donegan here looking like he's got a tough turn. A lot of pressure coming in from Julian John on the follow-up attack. That History of Benalia is going to get to Chapter 3, pumping that one Knight token that's left, plus the Dauntless Bodyguard, as well as that Snubhorn Sentry coming in for 3 damage.
Donegan shocks to 12 with the Breeding Pool, and here's 2 cast downs. A couple of Knights are going down. That History of Benalia, the Chapter 3, not the best part of the book.
No, and for the longest time, I kept telling people, don't play History of Benalia because of Chapter 3. Don't try to overdo the Knight theme. Just have the first and second chapters be where you want to be at, and then the third chapter is the icing on the cake.
And back on John's side, looks like he has 4th land and a Johnny Adversary, a Tyrants in hand. We'll see if that's where he goes on his turn.
I think they're just clarifying at what point the City's Blessing was reached, because when it was represented on the battlefield, there were technically only 9 permanents, but the way that the City's Blessing works, it's not a trigger. So at some point, the City's Blessing was gained, even though it wasn't shown. And at one point, once they figured out, hey, this had 10, this is currently active.
Yeah, so John set that up pre-combat. You traded a Knight in combat, but played his permanents pre-combat, and maybe he didn't announce it, but I'm almost positive I saw him put the token on the table. I don't know what was communicated there, so Blair's going to try to figure this out.
I mean, it's really weird. Invisible things like that don't actually trigger. As far as I understand the rule for things like the City's Blessing, is that if you have a permanent on the battlefield that generates the City's Blessing, and at any point you hit the 10 permanent threshold, you don't have to say anything. You just have the City's Blessing, and at some point if you attack with a Snubhorn Sentry, your opponent will say, hey, how big is that? And you can say 3/3, and that means you remembered the City's Blessing. Mm-hmm. You don't have to physically represent it, but it's the nice guy thing to do to put it on there. But at no point can you, quote-unquote, miss the City's Blessing if it ever you had 10 permanents with a City's with an Ascend card either resolving or on the battlefield.
Yeah, so we're all caught up here, and John has decided to deploy that a Johnny, pumps up the Sentry, comes across for 4. Donegan's at 8. Though on his turn, he has a Branchwalker and an Assassin's Trophy for the Johnny. Cleans the battlefield up a little bit.
Yeah, I think both players there was a little confusion from Donegan's side of things. That was cleared up by the judges quickly. Play here continues. A Johnny, Adversary of Tyrants, getting taken down by the Assassin Trophy. Julian here, still in the driver's seat, though. Still has a 4/4 coming in. He needs a big follow-up here to make sure that he can close out this game.
Well, there's 3 mana. He's got Benalish Marshal. Big attack from the Sentry. It's just going to eat the Branchwalker, though. We go back Donegan's way. Shock for Watergrave. There's that finality. We knew about that one.
Yeah, and even though he chump blocks to go to stay at 8, and then he shocks down to 6 to play that sweeper effect to clean up those 2 permanents that Julian John had access to that provided a lot of pressure.
Big draw for John there. There's History of Benalia. Donegan's got to do something about this, and here's one good draw deserves another. Hydroid Krasis for 4.
I saw him draw, and you're like, a good draw for Julian. I was like, that's a good draw for Dylan. I don't know.
A better draw for Dylan, I'll say that.
Yeah.
Chapter 2 on the history. Though John's got to do something about this Krasis. There's a tap at 3. Benalish Marshal, though those Knights are a little small until we get to Chapter 3 on the history.
Yeah, but as early as next turn, those are going to be attacking for 5 points and be able to trade with the Hydroid Krasis. Notably, Donegan did not play a land last turn, which means that all of his cards in hand are spells. And the cards he drew off Hydroid Krasis were also spells.
Yeah.
So Julian's got to fight through a lot of stuff over the next few turns, including this Wild Growth Walker, as well as the extra life gain that it produces.
Yeah, Merfolk Branchwalker immediately explores, Donegan to 11. 2 mana represented, and I believe Assassin's Trophy in hand as well.
Yeah, that's a potent one. Donegan can use that at instant speed to knock down the Banaush Marshal, which in turn will shrink the Knight tokens. And then we can do some blocking and maybe take down the whole squad with just the Assassin Trophy and a Branchwalker.
John's going to get to Chapter 3 on the history with Knights Abound this time. We'll see what he wants to do pre-combat. Getting some blockers out of the way would be very beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. If he has a Baffling End number 3 or potentially Conclave Tribunal, he can knock out one of these creatures before attacks, and then the Assassin's Trophy is no longer devastating. It is simply pretty good.
There are situations where Assassin's Trophy on Baffling End can be kind of funny. You get your 3/3, ambush your opponent in combat, though John's battlefield is a little bit too big for something like that.
Oh, absolutely. Here comes a Johnny Adversary of Tyrants. This is actually a pretty good draw for Julian John. He's going to pump up probably the 2 Knight tokens, I would guess, simply because the Banaush Marshal has the biggest target on its head right now. So Julian trying to minimize the effects of something like Cast Down or Assassin's Trophy.
And that is where John goes. He's going to attack with those Knights. They're currently pumped by counters, the Marshal and the History, so attacking for 6 with each of these.
So I don't mind. So Donegan has a weird choice here, right? He can Assassin's Trophy with the Banaush Marshal, which will in turn shrink the Knights, and right now they're 5/4s. So the Hydro Krasis can block 1, and then Donegan can block a certain, double block the other one or take the damage. The problem with that is that Julian's going to be left with a Johnny basically unchecked. What Dylan can do here is actually fall to 1, choose to Ravenous Chupacabra one of the tokens next turn, and then attack down the Johnny. But trading that Krasis also just is the safer play.
Yeah, Traces trades away with 1 Knight token. The other one comes in. Donegan goes to 6. He has Jadelight Ranger in hand, as well as Ravenous Chupacabra and Hostage Taker. The Taker is not very exciting here, but those other 2 cards are quite powerful. Well,
Taker is still just a straight-up Ravenous Chupacabra against a token, so using it here would be less ideal than waiting to steal a creature off of it. But the Chupacabra clears out the only blocker. 5 points come in at the Ajani, and again, Donegan able to turn the corner. And he's going to gain some more life here and really just close this game out quickly.
And Jadelight Ranger, draws Watery Grave, leaves Hydroid Krasis on top. Let's explore that one right where it is.
Yeah.
Donegan to 12. Here's a big attack. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's
Ryan.
Half of John's life total.
Ryan. You know what Julian John ain't? Ready for this jelly.
No, he's not. Not ready for this pirate either, as Hostage Taker takes away that blocker. Dylan Donegan up to 7-1 with a 2-0 victory over Julian John.